Good morning, Limon.
Good morning.
Good morning. Okay. It just seems to be you in the session at the moment, but that's fine. Let's get started. And if you have any questions, then just let me know. So we're looking at writing this morning. So you should be able to see the paper on the screen. So again, just a reminder that when you take your test, you will be using the online version of the test. So it looks slightly different, but the questions will be exactly the same questions they would be if you were taking the paper test. They won't be these questions we're doing today, obviously. These are just practice questions. So you get 22 marks, as you can see there, for each question, which means that you need to spend around half the time on each section, activity 1 and activity 2. Let's look at the first activity, and it says that you are going to be writing a report. There aren't enough parking spaces for the people who come to your place of work. You have been asked to write a report outlining the problems this causes. Your report should describe problems caused to staff, visitors, and people in the local area. Make suggestions about how parking spaces should be allocated and prioritised. Your report should be between 250 to 350 words. Okay, so initially, when you read the question and you know what text type you are being asked to write, you should start to think about what the features of that text are. So we've got report, so we know it's going to be factual. It's going to, for this context, going to describe a situation, the situation of the parking problems, and it's not about personal opinions. In terms of the structure, it should be split into paragraphs. You can add subheadings in a report for the organisation to make it clear. So once you've decided what elements you need to include, then you can think about the content. And you will have some paper to plan your report on, and give yourself a few minutes to do that. But really only 5 minutes maximum, because you want to spend most of the time writing your report. And also you need to leave a few minutes for proofreading to go over it, check it makes sense, and that you correct any spelling, grammar mistakes, and so on. So you need to leave a few minutes for that as well. So you don't want to spend too long on planning. So I have already put an answer in that I have written, and we're going to look at that in the context of the mark scheme. So we'll have a look at it, then we'll look at the mark scheme, and then we'll come back to the answer. So I've report on parking space issues. So I've got my heading there. And I've got an introductory paragraph. The shortage of parking spaces has become a significant issue impacting staff, visitors, and the local community. This report outlines the problems caused and proposes solutions to allocate and prioritise parking spaces effectively. So you can see here, I've got more subheadings, and initially I'm looking at the problems, and I've got subheadings for each one, and then the solutions. And I've used a numbered list for the solutions. Then I have a concluding paragraph. So I'm going to share with you now the mark scheme. Just make that a little bit bigger, as I think it would be useful for us to look at the answer while thinking about the mark scheme, because ultimately we want to achieve the maximum number of marks. So activity 1, the report. So what we're aiming for every time on this mark scheme is to look at the full mark, how we get the full mark, so the full mark description. So we don't want to be just getting 1 mark, so we want to look at how can we get full marks. So in terms of the content, it says the content is very detailed and communicates information, ideas and opinions clearly, coherently and effectively throughout. The text meets the needs of purpose and audience. So the text has been written with the purpose, so the task in mind, what are you writing and why, and also the audience, who is going to read it. So that's what we're aiming for with our content. And remember, it doesn't matter if you've got no experience of the subject, you're just going to use your imagination. And then the structure, the format and structure, again, we want to look at the maximum marks possible. So we want a clear and effective structure with an appropriate format, which allows for clear communication. So thinking about paragraphs, introduction, do we need subheadings, and so on. And this gives us an idea here, indicative content gives us an idea of what they're looking for. So it's got a beginning, middle and end. So it's got that introduction, it's got the main part of the report, and then it's got a conclusion. And the format, so headings, subheadings, bullet points, indentation and numbering. You may not need all of those things, but they will be looking to see that some of those have been included. So they can see that you can use a number of those structural features. Okay, any questions so far? Okay, so also they will be looking at spelling. So just let me read that. So you need to show that you are competent at spelling. So that's something you need to be aware of, particularly when you're proofreading, when you've written your report. In punctuation, a wide range. And it tells you there what you could include: colons, commas, inverted commas, apostrophes and quotation marks. They want to see some of those. You don't need to use every single one, but it's got to be more than just full stops and commas. And your grammar. So again, we're looking at the 3 marks because that's what we want to achieve. So this tells us all of the things that should be included to get 3 marks or full marks on this element. So a full range of grammatical constructions, and then it tells us subject-verb agreement, consistent use of tense, definite and indefinite articles, and modality devices. Okay, so that's all for question 1 or task 1. So let's have a look at the answer again, thinking about those elements. So straight away, just looking at how this appears, in fact, I'm going to make this a bit bigger on my screen for you. So hopefully it's clear. So straight away, you can see, just looking at the layout, that I have used a structure. I've got paragraphs. I've split my text into paragraphs and I've used subheadings. So I've got a clear structure. Okay. And it's got a defined beginning, the introduction, the middle or the main body of the text. And then if we go to the bottom, it's got a conclusion. So it's got the beginning, the middle, and the end. Clear example of those. Okay. So I'm going to be going up and down a little bit. Okay, so let's start to read some of this answer and highlight some of what has been used. So in this section, we're starting off with the problems caused. So staff. So there's a lack of adequate parking spaces, forces employees to park farther from the workplace, leading to increased stress and lateness. This negatively affects productivity and morale. Staff spend additional time and energy on their commute. Additionally, the competition for spaces can foster resentment among colleagues. Visitors. Visitors struggle to park, resulting in delays and frustration. This can damage the company's reputation, as clients and partners may perceive the parking difficulties as a sign of poor organisation, and visitors may miss appointments or appointments or meetings. The local community. The overflow of workplace parking into nearby streets creates inconvenience for residents. Streets become congested and residents find it challenging to park near their homes, leading to tensions between the company and the community. Okay, so you can see there we have in those paragraphs, we have complex sentences used. So they'll definitely be looking for that. Not just simple sentences all the time. You can use short, simple sentences, but they will be looking for more complex sentences. Okay. Let's just go on here. And then if we look at the next section, so as well as using paragraphs and subheadings, I've put in here a numbered list. So this is showing the assessor that you can also use other organisational features. So it could be a bullet point list, or it could be a numbered list, but adding that in shows another element that you can do, rather than just having the text separated into paragraphs. So you're showing other elements of what you have learned, and what you always want to be doing is showing what you can do, showing what you know, because the examiner can only give you marks for that if they can see it in what you have written. Okay, so we've got a numbered list here for our solutions, proposed solutions, and a subheading really for each point in the list. So we've also used here, so if I read the first one, reserve parking for essential staff, allocate a certain number of parking spots for essential staff who need to be present on site daily. This ensures key personnel can access the workplace easily. So I've started each of these with the, if you look at the word that starts each section, so implement, encourage, offer, allocate, we're using the imperative verb there. So again, it's showing another element of what I can do. I can use appropriate language. So using the imperative there, because I'm giving proposed solutions. So it's more effective because it's telling the reader what they could do or what they should do. Any questions about that? So I'm talking about these first verbs here. So the imperative is like a command. So rather than you could allocate, by just putting allocate, it gives more meaning to it. Sorry, just get rid of that. It's more powerful for the reader. Okay. Any questions at all? So again, I've done that for each one. Designate, encourage, and so on. Okay. And then I have my conclusion at the end. So the shortage of parking spaces at our workplace causes significant problems for staff, visitors, and the local community. By implementing a combination of reserved parking, carpooling incentives, flexible working, public transport subsidies, and rotational parking, we can alleviate these issues and create a more efficient and harmonious parking environment. So in terms of our punctuation, we've got a good example here of the use of commas in a list. So in this sentence, we've used a list. So of things that the company could do or implement. So reserve parking, carpooling incentives, and so on. So that's showing that we can use the comma to separate those items in a list in our sentence. So again, showing the examiner, the assessor, what we're able to do. Okay, so we've also got examples there of using the colon. So again, just reminding you, you need to make sure that you are using a variety of punctuation. So we've got possessive apostrophe there as well. Okay. So another thing to note is that if we look back at the question or the task, you're writing a report for your workplace. So presumably you're writing this for the managers in the workplace. So it's going to be formal. And I'm sure you can see that the tone of this is formal. So we've got formal language, the structure is formal, and it doesn't include any slang or any contractions. So we haven't got any don'ts or can'ts. We've got, you know, all the wording is in full. So we haven't got any contractions there, is what I'm trying to say. So the style of it is formal. Okay. So are there any sections that anybody would particularly like to look at or ask any questions about here? I'm happy to do that. Okay, let's just check our mark scheme again and check that we've looked at all of this. So it is detailed, it's communicating the information and ideas clearly. We've got coherence and cohesion in there. We've got that structure, which makes the content easy to read. Okay, we've got that formal style, so it's meeting the needs of the audience and the purpose. It's a formal report. The structure, it's clear and effective. We've got those paragraphs, we've got a start, middle, and an end. And we've got headings, subheadings, we've got that numbered list as well. As you can see here, we've included most of those. We haven't got bullet points, but we have got a numbered list there. So the spelling is accurate. So when you are proofreading your own work, you'll read it, every single word carefully. And often when you're proofreading, especially in an exam situation, you will have made a couple of spelling mistakes just while you're working quickly, and you're just looking out for those and correcting any. So the punctuation, so as I've just pointed out, we had colons, commas. We didn't have inverted commas, but that's okay. We don't need every single thing if it's not appropriate. We had apostrophes. We didn't need quotation marks in this. You could add in a quote if you wanted to, about a visitor who found it particularly difficult to park one day. But it's not a case of definitely having every element. It's about using a variety of that punctuation effectively. And as I mentioned, it's not enough just to use full stops and commas. You need to show that you're able to use more than that. And the grammar. So as I mentioned, we've got different types of sentences. The tense use is consistent, subject, verb, agreement, and so on. So any questions about that? Okay, let's look at task 2. So feel free to ask a question at any point. Okay, let's look at the task. An article on your local newsfeed argues that public transport should be free of charge in order to reduce the number of cars on the road. The newsfeed is asking for readers to submit articles, giving their opinions in response. Write an article expressing your own views. In your article, you should consider the advantages and disadvantages of free public transport. State whether it would encourage more people to use public transport. Give examples to support your opinions. So it's very clear here. This is going to help us to plan and structure our work because it's telling us exactly what they want to see. So make sure you've got all of those elements in, and that's going to help you get the maximum number of marks. Now, this task is an article, which is very similar in structure and features to a report, which we've already written. But in an article, there will be a mixture of facts and personal opinions. Okay, so I've already prepared an answer that we can look at together. So straight away, I've got my heading there. So I'll just read the introduction. The debate on whether public transport should be free of charge to reduce the number of cars on the road has gained significant attention. Advocates argue it could lead to numerous benefits, while critics highlight potential drawbacks. This article examines both sides of the issue and considers whether free public transport would indeed encourage more people to use it. Okay, so we're telling the reader what they are going to be reading in our article. So again, as I've mentioned, it is a similar structure to a report. So we've got headings, subheadings, and we have organised our writing into paragraphs. So we started off, there's a clear structure. We started off with advantages and then we have disadvantages. And we have a conclusion at the end. Okay, so let's have a look at the mark scheme. So I'll just share that with you now. Let's try again. There we go. So Article 2, so we're looking at the, Activity 2, the article, we're looking at the mark scheme now. So again, we're looking at what's needed to get the maximum number of marks. So our article needs to be very detailed, communicating information and our ideas coherently, clearly, effectively throughout. It meets the needs of purpose and audience. So we can already see that we've got a cohesive structure. We've got the paragraphs, the headings and subheadings, and so on. Okay. So again, clear, effective structure in an appropriate format. So the format, obviously, for an article is going to be different than how we would format an email or a letter. So it's making sure that you're using the appropriate format for the text type. So again, we want to be including these or some of these, at least a few of them, those features. So again, the spelling, what we need to do is the same. And again, for the punctuation, a range of punctuation showing that we can use more than just full stops and commas. And our grammatical construction is accurate. And we're making sure that we're using subject-verb agreement, consistent tense, and so on. So let's go back to the answer while we've got that the mark scheme in our mind. Okay, so we've read the introduction already. So the advantages of free public transport, environmental benefits. In my opinion, this is one of the most compelling arguments for free public transport. So as I mentioned in an article, and particularly in this article, because the question has actually, or the task has actually required it, expressing your own views. So in my opinion. So if you're asked to express your own views, that's a good phrase to start a sentence with. In my opinion, this is one of the most compelling arguments for free public transport. So in terms of our vocabulary that we're using, so we could have just put one of the strongest arguments, powerful, but using ambitious, and a variety of vocabulary. So compelling. By decreasing the number of cars on the road, we could significantly cut down on greenhouse gases, contributing to a cleaner environment. Cities which have implemented free public transport have reported reduced traffic congestion and lower pollution levels. So we haven't put a precise example in there, but we have given an example of cities who've reported this. We obviously don't have access to the internet whilst we're doing our test, but you could make one up just to show that you know what to do here. So you could just put, so you could add something there, for example, I don't know, Barcelona. I don't know if this is true, but it's just showing what you can do, that you know how to add examples. So introduced free transport in reported I don't know, 15% reduction in congestion. You could just make up the name of the city. It's just showing that you know, if you were writing a real article, that you would use research to come up with those types of statistics, data, examples of that. Does that make sense? If you knew one, you could put it in, but it doesn't matter if you don't know one, you could make one up. You could just make up a city name. Don't need to use a real one, but it's just showing that you know how to do that, and that you know that adding that example is an important part of this text type. Any questions about that? Okay. So our next subheading, increased accessibility. Making public transport free can improve accessibility for all, including the elderly, students, and people with disabilities. I believe, so again, I mentioned about in my opinion, I believe showing that this is your personal opinion, which is what you've been asked to do. And again, thinking about the vocabulary we use, we need to use more than just very simple vocabulary, inclusivity, accessibility, and so on. Higher social equity, as everyone can travel freely for work, education, and leisure. And then the structure, we've had our advantages, now we're looking at the disadvantages. So financial sustainability. One major concern is the financial sustainability of free public transport. Operating and maintaining a public transport system requires substantial funding. Without fair revenue, alternative sources of funding are needed, which could result in a reallocation of funds from other areas like healthcare and education. And then we've got other disadvantages. Overcrowding and maintenance, behavioural change. So then our structure, we've done the advantages and disadvantages, and now we're looking towards making a decision. Would free public transport encourage usage? So as well there, we're using a question. So we're varying in our structure, we're using headings, subheadings, we're varying the type of headings. So we've got a question there, and we're also showing we're using different types of punctuation. So all of these things are adding to the overall view of your work and also what you can do. So it's adding to those marks that you want. So success of free public transport depends on the existing infrastructure and cultural attitudes. In cities with well-developed, efficient public transport systems, such as my hometown of London, Making it free could significantly increase usage. So that part there, you're giving an example, which is what the task has asked you to do. And it's also a personal anecdote, personal experience. And again, our last sentence here, however, in areas where public transport is less reliable or extensive, I believe. So showing your personal opinion. And again, the structure there, we've got heading for our conclusion. Free public transport presents both promising advantages and significant challenges. While it could reduce environmental impact, its financial, sustainability and potential overcrowding are concerns. To encourage more people to use public transport, I believe a holistic approach is needed. Improving the reliability, coverage and convenience of the system is as crucial as making it free. So that last sentence, if we unpack that a little bit, I've got a final comment, a final opinion of what you think about this subject. We've got an I believe, so highlighting what your opinion is, which again, you've been asked to do in the task. We've got the use of the colon as well there. So showing we can use a variety of punctuation. So there's a lot in that last sentence that we're going to get marks for. Okay, any questions about anything at all that we have looked at in this task? If you're not able or you don't want to talk, if you've got, you can always write in the chat. Or is there any particular element that you want me to go back to and look at or explain? Okay, thanks, Lemon. So what I could show you is when you, thanks, Fowler. I just, oh, I've got too many things open on my screen. Let me just get rid of those. Okay, so stop the share for a moment. What I can show you is where you can go to find the practice papers. Okay. Right, I'll share this with you now. So if you want to have a look at practice papers yourself and have a look at the mark schemes, if you go to the NCFE website and look under the qualifications section and delivery support, then you'll be able to access the paper-based or on-screen past papers. So qualification information pages, you click on that and go down. And we're looking at functional skills English, and it's the bottom one, level 2 functional skills, not entry level. It's the bottom one, just level 2. And again, if you scroll down, we're looking at assessment materials. And here are the past papers that you can download. So they are like a Word document on your screen, like the one we've looked at today. And you can also when you download it, you'll also get, it's a zip file, you'll get the paper and you'll get the mark scheme so that you can look at both of those. So if you look at the mark scheme as well, then it shows you what they're looking for and what they want you to include, what they want to see. So that's really helpful to look at the past papers, the practice papers, alongside the mark scheme. Okay, so that's how you get to those. So if you look on the NCFE website, and let's just go back here. So, okay. So these are the on-screen past papers, and it's a good idea to have a go at doing these. You'll need to do it on a laptop, or I think it works on a tablet, but it's not going to work properly on a phone. So if you don't have access to a laptop, you can use your local library, or you can just ring the office and say, can I come in and practice? And they will make sure that there's access to a computer in the office one day. Just let them know that you come in. So we're looking at writing today. So I'll just show you what it looks like. Again, you can look at the mark scheme. And it will look like this. So you just press OK, confirm, and then it will open up. And it gives you the same instructions that are on the paper version. So there we go. There we go. Then we can start the test. Read the instructions. Okay, and it happens to be, that's just coincidence. That's exactly the same one we've looked at today. And then you would just write in here. For the online test, if you're doing planning, don't put it in here, do it on paper. And when you go to do your test, when you do the real test rather than the practice one, you'll be given paper to write your plan, any notes you want to make. Okay. I'll give you the word count here as well, which obviously I didn't have doing on paper, because it does give you the word count there, 250 to 350 words. Okay. Time's up there at the top as well, so that you can keep an eye on what you're doing. Again, as I mentioned earlier, for the writing paper, there's 2 activities and half marks for each, so about half the time on each. Any questions about that, about accessing the practice? Okay, has anyone had a go at accessing the online practice papers yet? It's definitely worth doing because not yet. So it's definitely worth having a go at that because it will give you an idea of how it looks on the day. It's just, I would definitely recommend that you have a go at doing the online one in addition to any paper versions you do, just because it's like the real test then. Okay. Okay then, so any questions at all? Is there anything particular you want me to look at? Otherwise, we will finish for today. No. Okay, well, thank you, everybody. I hope that was helpful. And please come to the reading session next week as well, so we can have a look at that together. Okay, thank you, everybody. Have a good day.